The amount of support that I got is like overwhelming a little bit.
Oh my god, you guys, you'll never believe what Mike just revealed in the latest episode of 90 Day Fiance. We finally found out about the truth about how he and Ximena first met.
Yeah, it's definitely weird having like a normal relationship just out there. Like every little thing is like a big deal.
And as it turns out, he has been lying about it to everyone this entire time, just like we all thought. He's been feeding us this cute story of how they met, but that isn't even close to the truth. I guess Ximena was really right about him this entire time. So anyway, guys, I don't want to waste any more time. Let's get into it. So in the latest episode of 90 Day Fiance, Ximena finally broke up with Mike about 300 different times. And to be honest, I wasn't surprised in the slightest. They've had so many problems ever since the beginning, and honestly, it was only a matter of time.
Because I didn't want to watch that one again, because I don't want to relive it.
And like I said, I fully expected it. But what I didn't expect was the absolute, insane fallout that followed the breakup. Mike was just completely lost, and it was crazy to see. So first of all, when she first told him, he just up and left. He literally ran into the city. Ximena was super weirded out, and I kind of was too, to be honest. But, he was being super dramatic.
That one, it seemed like everything I did was like walking on like eggshells or whatever.
But that was really just the beginning, because he really showed us his true colors after this little incident. Everything he did after running out on her was just so much worse. I mean, I really used to feel bad for Mike, but after this episode, I just think he is the absolute worst. The things that he said and did were just inexcusable, in my opinion, and Ximena was actually kind of somewhat reasonable with him, in my opinion, at first, and she even agreed to let him stay in the house, but I bet she regretted that decision pretty quickly, because Mike took this as an opportunity to try and make, her like take him back.
Looking back now onto that episode, I'm wondering in my head if she really ever did love me.
It was the most bizarre thing, and Ximena tried to give him the wedding rings back, and he straight out just refused, saying that she would keep them until they could work things out, but Ximena said she didn't want them because they were broken up, and she just didn't want to be with him anymore, which was totally understandable. They broke up, but Mike really didn't seem to grasp the concept of a breakup at all. It was just so awkward to watch, but once, she said that everything broke loose, Mike basically started just fully gaslighting Ximena, and it was insane to watch. He started saying all these things about how, he was the best thing that has ever happened to her, and how he could teach her English and provide her with opportunities and all this other stuff, and basically, he started just trying to buy her off. And all of his arguments revolved around money, and he even literally told her that without his money, she and her kids would end up living on the street. I mean, how disgusting and just rude, is that? And he's been playing this nice guy role the whole time, but now it looks like all of that has just been a complete and total lie. And the worst part was that when Ximena shut all this down and told him that she'll just get a job and that it was really over, he clearly decided to change his tactics, because instead of showing her what a great opportunity being with him was, he tried to make her look bad in front of the cameras, and he straight out just asked her what her work she would be doing and if she would go back to this adult, online modeling kind of stuff, if you know what I'm talking about. And this was when we found out that he's been lying to us the whole entire time, because from what we learned on the show, Mike and Ximena basically met on somewhat of a dating app when he changed his location to Colombia and they matched. But in this episode, Ximena revealed that they actually met when Mike was using this kind of website to watch and talk to ladies and whatnot, and that's where she worked. So we already kind of knew this from Ximena's social media. She talked about this not too long ago, but now we finally have confirmation from Mike himself and on 90 Day Fiance. They actually met when Ximena was working as a model of sorts, and their confrontation on the show was honestly both absolutely horrible and kind of hilarious of how well Ximena actually handled herself. It was so clear that Mike revealed her real job to make her look bad, but she didn't take, the bait. She basically just sort of went with it, explaining that, it was a good way to make money in Colombia and where it's super hard to make money and have a stable job. So, Mike is clearly one of those people that looks down on this type of employment, and it really showed. And I just thought it was kind of ironic considering he was on the website in the first place. I mean, first of all, he used this fact to throw it in her face, but it goes even beyond that, honestly, because we know that Mike basically made Ximena quit the job and promised to take care of her if she did, and she even said that Mike was embarrassed about how they met, and that's probably why he made her lie about how they met. But to me, it just makes him look bad, not her. Like, he is clearly a massive hypocrite. hypocrite. I mean, he's the one who was using that website. He was on there practically every day, at least according to Ximena, and he was the one that made her lie about it because he felt ashamed. So I don't know, Mike. If you were so embarrassed, maybe you shouldn't have gone on a show that millions of people watch, but even if he was that ashamed, that still doesn't excuse a simple fact that he was using the website himself. And that just makes me so annoyed at him and his behavior toward Ximena. Like, it's fine for him to use the website and to pay for it, but it's somehow awful that Ximena worked there and he can go on these websites, but she needs to be saved from the job and quit, if they are to be together and whatnot. And he can give money to these women, but he wouldn't actually date someone that actively works there. I mean, it's just ridiculous. How is it okay for him to be this judgmental toward her? It just is insane. And if he was trying to make Ximena look bad, he completely failed. He just made himself look like a selfish, lying hypocrite who is just trying to control her, and he's been lying to us this entire time, trying to make himself look like a nice guy, but when in reality, he's just the worst. I mean, he didn't even stop at judging her for considering going back to that job, because then he went on this whole rant about how this entire thing just confirms that she was only using him for money, which honestly, how does that actually prove any of that? If she was using him for money, wouldn't she be more willing, to make it work with him at least a little bit longer, or keep the wedding rings so she could sell them off? And it's like, plus, I mean, let's not forget what was said. We now know that she wasn't exactly using him for money anyway. He told her to quit her job and that he would help her if she did. So technically, it was his idea in the first place to give her money. And from what we know, he spent about 15 grand on her throughout their relationship, and that's definitely a ton of money. But once again, I have to say, it was his idea. So I just kind of think it's all so ridiculous, and he's now trying to spin it into this narrative about how Ximena is just the worst. Even if she was, with him for the money, it still was his idea, and no one forced him to offer, no one forced him to pay her rent. As far as we're concerned, that was on him. And you want to know what the absolute worst part of this whole situation was? That after all the arguing, Ximena was just fed up, and she told him to pack his things and go to a hotel and get out of there, and she didn't want him staying in the house under the same roof as her kids. And honestly, I don't blame her, because it was a very crazy situation, and that's when it started being even worse than ever before. He started going on about how he had proof that he was the one who paid the rent, so it was his right to stay over. I mean, how pathetic is this guy? Especially when there's kids involved. She didn't want him there, and I just don't understand. There's kids involved. Get out. It was just ridiculous to watch, and I felt so bad. And some people on Reddit pointed out, how this whole situation between them could easily be read as almost like financial abuse, kind of. And I honestly couldn't agree anymore, you guys. Like, Mike was definitely trying to control her with money. He couldn't accept that she broke up with him and decided to try to force her to basically stay by, gaslighting and blackmailing all this stuff and use money against her. And then, he had the nerve to call her mean and evil and cold, and it was just ridiculous. I mean, how ironic is it? But don't get me wrong, I will say this. Ximena has not always been the nicest. She's not been very nice, but if anyone was being calculated in this scenario, obviously it wasn't her, it was Mike. He was just grasping at straws, trying to maintain any last bit of power that he had over her by just reminding her of all the money he could give her, and he was screaming at her for using his money, yet he was basically, trying to, buy her back in the same breath. It made no sense. His whole behavior was 100% just not okay and unacceptable. And like I said, I really used to feel bad for Mike. He did seem like somewhat of a nice guy at the beginning of the season, but now he's really shown us his true colors and who he is, and I just have no sympathy for him anymore. And Ximena was right about him this whole time, and I'm honestly glad that she ended things with him. And when you combine this, behavior with all the other things that she said about him, kind of just not being good towards her, it really seems like she dodged a huge bullet, and Mike is just the worst. And this whole episode really made me rethink so many things. I mean, it also made me go back to when Ximena posted a TikTok with her new boyfriend, and Mike's reaction to it was super sad. But then, it's like we all thought that it was kind of understandable, but we thought that she maybe kind of cheated on him. But now we found out that, they've broken up this whole time. So this just makes Mike's reaction even weirder. It's like, why was he being so dramatic? Did he still have trouble accepting the fact that they were over? Because that seemed to be the case on the show. The guy just can't take a hint. And even when Ximena's basically just been screaming, 1,000 times that she wants to break up with him, that she is breaking up with him. So I can't even literally count how many times she said that it's over. She didn't say that, maybe it's over. She goes, it is over. And he still wouldn't accept it. So, was his reaction just dramatic because he thought they'd get back together? I mean, if so, to me, it's ridiculous. And Mike really needs to get a grip. I get that Ximena was basically the first woman he's ever dated ever since high school, blah, 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 whatever. But still, this behavior is not okay. And the last thing I wanted to mention real quick was that Mike has been somewhat active on his social media after the last episode, and he posted a couple of things, including a prayer and something about how the memes and internet jokes have lasting effects on people's mental health, which honestly I get, but I just don't have a whole lot of sympathy for him. I mean, I think this is the same guy that did post some pretty offensive memes a while back, and plus, Ximena has been getting just so much hate all this time, but he didn't say anything then. Now the heat's on him, and suddenly he's all getting all preachy and whatnot. But honestly, guys, I've done such a 180 on Mike. I mean, he's really not the nice guy, at least in my opinion, that I once thought he was. To me, he's kind of a liar, he's not very nice, and he kind of manipulated her, and I'm so glad that Ximena was strong enough to not let all that money and everything get, to her and get in the way. Like she said, all she needs is her kids, she doesn't need Mike, and I kind of loved hearing that. But anyway, you guys, what do you guys think? I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. The latest episode was honestly kind of just wild, and I'm still reeling from it. And has your opinion on Mike changed too? Definitely let me know in the comments below. Well, guys, thank you all so much for watching this video. Please do me a huge favor, hit that like, follow, share, subscribe button, and y'all better stay tuned for many more videos.